So good morning. We are the group 10. So we will tackle about Early Childhood Development Act or RA 8980 and Kinder Education Act RA 10157 and Enhanced Basic Education Act 2013 or RA 10533 and Do 40s 2011 and Do 32s 2015, and lastly curriculum framework. So my topic is all about Republic Act 8980, so Early Childhood Care Development or EECD, and other known as EECD as Act defines right of a children, survival, development, and special protection with full recognition of nature of child and its special needs, and support parents and the rules as a primary caregivers and as children's first teachers. So, early childhood care development and education is more preparation for primary school, and it aims at the holistic development of a child, especially sa ang emotional, cognitive, and build a solid broad foundation of a lifelong learning and well-being. The next, Section 3 objectives. The objectives of the national EECD or system are: first, we have to achieve, improve the child survival rates by ensuring that adequate health and nutrition programs are accessible to young children and their mothers from prenatal period through the early childhood. So adequate is enough ang ginagive sa or sa para ihatag ang health and nutrition programs, and very accessible din siya. And second is enhance the physical, social, emotional, cognitive, and psychological, spiritual, and language development of young children. So the second objectives sa national EECD. And the third is to enhance the role of the parents and other caregivers as the primary caregivers and educators of their children from birth onwards. And D is to enhance the capabilities to service providers and their supervisors to compile with the quality standards for various EECD programs. And F, to enhance, to sustain efforts, communities, and promote EECD programs to ensure that the special support is provided for poor and disadvantaged communities. So, gina-promote niya siya sa nasa mga laylayan and sa mga disadvantaged na mga communities na mas pabor sa ilaha ang karing EECD nga program. And next, ensure the young children are adequately prepared for the formal learning system, that the both public and private schools are responsive to developmental needs of these children. And next is establish an efficient system for early identification, prevention, referral, and intervention for development disorders and disabilities in early childhood. And lastly, to improve the quality standard of the public and private EECD programs through, but not limited to, our registrations and credentials system for EECD service providers. Next. So, Section 4 of definitions and purpose of this act. So, early childhood, first is early childhood care and development or EECD is the system that refers to the full range of health, nutrition, early childhood education, and social services. Programs that provide for the basic holistic needs of young children from birth to age 6 to promote the optimum growth and development. So these programs are include the
Republic Act 10157 or Kindergarten Education Act. Section 4. Institutionalization of kindergarten education. Kindergarten education is hereby institutionalized as part of basic education and for school year 2011 to 2012 shall be implemented partially and thereafter it shall be made mandatory and compulsory for entrance to grade 1. Section 5. Medium of instruction. The state shall hereby adopt the mother tongue-based multilingual education method. The mother tongue of the learner shall be the primary medium of instruction for teaching and learning in the kindergarten level. However, exceptions shall be made to the following cases. First, we have when the pupils in the kindergarten classroom have different mother tongue or when some of them speak another mother tongue. Second, we have when the teacher does not speak the mother tongue of the learners. Third, when resources in line with the use of mother tongue are not yet available. And lastly, when teachers are not yet trained how to use the MTB MLE program. Next, we have Section 7, Duties, Powers, and Functions. Department of Education or DepEd, through the Bureau of Elementary Education or BEE, shall exercise the following powers and functions. First, we have oversee and supervise the organization, operation, and implementation of the kindergarten education program. Next, we have developed the curriculum for kindergarten education consistent with the universally accepted norms and standards, including values formation, all of which shall be developmentally appropriate, and use of the MTB MLE as a medium of instruction, and to periodically review such for purposes of upgrading. Third, develop teaching strategies using the unique feature of the MTB MLE, which shall include but not limited to the following. First, we have the two-track method, storytelling and reading, listening story, oral communication activities. Next, interactive strategies, use of manipulative games, and experiential small group discussion and total physical response, among others. The learning development material shall consist of the following at the minimum. We have listening story, small books, big books, experience story, primer lessons, and lessons exemplars. Conceive, develop, and extend a continuing professional development program for kindergarten teachers to ensure constant updating of their knowledge in current trends, pedagogy, methodologies, and concept on early childhood education. Also prescribe the necessary qualification for the hiring and accreditation for teachers who will handle the kindergarten education program and exercise authority over the operation of private kindergarten institutions. Kindergarten education is vital to the academic and technical development of the Filipino child, for it is the period when the young mind's absorptive capacity of learning is at its sharpest. It is also the policy of the state to make education learner-oriented and responsive to the needs, cognitive, and cultural capacity, the circumstances and diversity of learners, school, and communities through the appropriate language of teaching and learning.
Section 4 Definition of Terms.
For the purpose of this IRR, the following terms shall mean or be understood as follows. First, Act refers to Republic Act number 10533 entitled An Act Enhancing the Philippine Basic Education System by strengthening its curriculum and increasing the number of years for basic education. appropriating funds, therefore, and for other purposes, otherwise known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Second, we have the Learning Center. Learning Center refers to a physical space to house learning resources and facilities of a learning program for out-of-school youth and adults. It is a venue for face-to-face learning activities and other learning opportunities for community development and improvement of the people's quality of life. This may also be referred to as Community Learning Center authorized or recognized by the DepEd. So a learning center is typically a designated area within the classroom that provides students with exciting and interesting experiences to practice, enrich, reteach, and enhance their learning. These types of centers are filled with manipulatives, art materials, books, and other instructional tools. So third, we have learner. Learner refers to a pupil or students or to a learner in the alternative learning system. Okay, so a learner, a person who is learning a subject or skill. So fourth, we have mother language or first language. Mother language or first language, L1, refers to the language or languages first learned by a child, which he or she identifies with, is identified as a native language user of by others, which he or she knows best or uses most. This includes Filipino Sign Language used by individuals with pertinent disabilities. The regional or native language refers to the traditional speech variety or variety of Filipino Sign Language existing in a region, area, or place. So the mother language is your the mother tongue or a person's native language, the language you are using at home. Fifth is the non-DepEd public school. Refers to a public school offering basic education operated by an agency of the national government other than the DepEd or by a local government unit.
DepEd Order 40, Series of 2011, Amendment to DepEd Order Number 51, Series of 2004. Standard curriculum for public schools and private matters. Starting school year 2011 to 2012, all public schools with substantial number of Muslim enrollees and private madaris adopting the standard madrasa curriculum are enjoined to implement the refined elementary madrasa curriculum or REMC. As amendment to DepEd Order Number 51 Series of 2004, entitled Standard Curriculum for Elementary, Public Schools and Private Madaris. The said DepEd Order has been adopted by the DepEd Administration, Region for Muslim Mindanao, or ARMM. Under Executive Order EO Number of 30A of our ARMM Regional Governor, this has been monitored closely and evaluated by Basic Education Assistance for Mindanao Australian Agency for International Development or BEAM, AUSED, with the recommendation to undertake thorough review and refinement of the curriculum, including the textbook, teachers, manual, and other learning materials. The review and refinement of the said curriculum were undertaken in 2010 by the CMEO Inotech as service provider together with Muslim experts in Arabic language and studies and curriculum experts and Bureau of Elementary Education or BEE, the reviewed curriculum was submitted for further evaluation by another set of Muslim experts in Arabic language and Islamic studies, including local stakeholders. The outcome of the review is the refined elementary madrasa curriculum, or the REMC, with two models. The REMC for public schools, coined as Arabic language and Islamic values education, or the ALIVE, and the refined standard madrasa curriculum, or the RSMC for private madaris. Both models contain learning area expectation for grades 1 to 6. REMC aims to establish a smooth transfer of Muslim pupils from recipient private madrasa to public schools, with a live program or vice versa. Unify the long history of dichotomy of education among Muslims and promote the Filipino national identity at the same time, preserve the Filipino Muslims' cultural heritage. All elementary public schools with at least 15 Muslim pupils and recipient private madaris are enjoined to implement the REMC contained in the enclosure.
DO 32S 2015, Adopting the Indigenous Peoples Education Curriculum Framework. IPED Curriculum Framework seeks to provide guidance to schools and other education programs, both public and private, as they engage with indigenous communities and localizing, indigenizing, and enhancing the K-12 curriculum based on their respective educational and social contexts. Indigenous education curriculum specifically focuses on teaching indigenous knowledge, models, methods, and content within formal or non-formal educational system. So first, we have pursuant to DepEd Order number 62S 2011 entitled Adopting the National Indigenous Peoples Education or IPED Policy Framework, and DepEd Order number 43S 2013 entitled Implementing Rules and Regulations of Republic Act number 10533, otherwise known as the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. The Department of Education or DepEd is adopting the Enclosed Indigenous Peoples Education Curriculum Framework. Ang pag-aaral ay walang pinipili. We have all the rights. No matter how different our culture is, we are equal. Every indigenous people have a right to engage any education programs provided by the IPED curriculum framework. So second, we have recognizing the right of indigenous peoples to basic education that is culturally rooted and responsive. The IPED curriculum framework seeks to provide guidance to schools and other education programs, both public and private, as they engage with indigenous communities in localizing, indigenizing, and enhancing the K-12 curriculum based on their respective educational and social context. Mahalaga para sa mga indigenous people na hindi mawala ang suporta ng IPED sa kanila, dahil isa rin ang paaralan at ang mga education program na makakatulong sa kanila. Because of this, they can share their indigenous knowledge and also their practices or experiences that can help further education. So third, we have fundamental to IPED is establishing institutionalized partnership between indigenous communities and the respective school or learning programs which serve them This is to be pursued through sustainable community engagement, which guarantees the meaningful participation of indigenous communities in the inclusion of their indigenous knowledge systems and practices, or IKSPs, and indigenous learning systems, or ILS, in the basic education curriculum. So the community engagement of IPED curriculum is the help of department to achieve the rights of indigenous people in education for school engagement and education program that can help them for their learning. Fourth is the continuous process of community engagement and refinement of the IPED curriculum at the school community level actualizes the department's commitment to the attainment of the above-mentioned right of indigenous peoples to education. In this regard, for schools and learning programs serving indigenous learners, the aims of the K-12 program are realized through IPED. Fifth, we have IPED curriculum framework was formulated based on inputs from a series of consultations conducted by the DepEd, Indigenous Peoples Education Office, or IPSEO, with community elders, leaders, and implementers of community-based IPED initiatives. Last, we have immediate dissemination of and strict compliance with this order is directed.
Curriculum framework. So when we say curriculum framework, a curriculum framework is an organized plan or a set or standards of learning outcomes that defines the content to be learned in terms of clear, definable standards of what the student should know and able to do. So, as a curriculum part of an outcome base of education or the standards based on education, reform design, the framework is the second step defining clear high standards which will be achieved by all students. So the curriculum is that aligned to the standards and students are assessed against the standards, and as compared with a traditional education which is concerned only about delivering content. A standard based on education reform system of promises that all will succeed if all are held or high expectations. When the standards are reached, there will be no achievements gap where some group are allowed to score lower than others, or the disabled disabled are offered also different opportunities than others. So all will meet world class standards and be qualified for good colleges and train for a good job which pay for good wages. In traditional education system, the curriculum was defined by those who created textbook rather than the government bodies which assembled group and stakeholders to create standard based on the consensus of what students should know and able to do.